So you're thinking about buying a shared ownership, or you bought a shared ownership a few years ago and now you're wondering what your next steps are. Well, you've got a few options, so let's find out what they are. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam, I'm an expert mortgage broker. Today we're talking about shared ownership, and we're going to talk about how to buy out the rest of your share. So how to turn your property from shared ownership to 100% owned by you, so no more rent to pay. So a shared ownership property then is a property, it could be a house or a flat, that you have bought or you're going to buy, and you're going to buy a certain percentage of that property. So let's say you're going to buy half of the property, and then for the other half we're going to pay a rent. So we're going to pay a rent based on the value of the other half of the house or the flat. And the more of the property that you can buy, the better, because that means the less rent you pay on the rest. Typically you're going to be able to buy between sort of 25 and 75% of the property, and then you rent the rest. So the more we can buy, the better. So that really is the key with shared ownership, buying as much as you can as soon as you can. That way it will cost you as little as possible over the length of the term. Because if you always keep a shared ownership and then sell it in 25, 30 years time, it's probably quite an expensive way of doing it. So I tend to tell people to buy as much as they can at the start and try and make it not shared ownership as soon as they realistically can, and that might mean moving and buying something else, or what we're going to talk about now is buying out the rest of that share. Now, most shared ownership companies and properties allow what we call staircasing. So staircasing basically is being able to buy extra shares in the property. Normally a certain percentage, normally 10% at a time. So let's say you start with a 40% share, then in the future you can increase that to 50 or 60 or 70, and then the whole thing maybe. So you can do it in chunks like that. So you can staircase, you can go up the stairs. So that's quite a good way of gradually owning more and more of the property, and you could do that maybe as your income increases, or if you find a partner and you move them in as well, or whatever your situation is. The more income you've got, the more you'll be able to increase the shares of that property. So let's talk then about how we're going to buy the whole property. Now, this is best done at the point of remortgaging, so when we're moving from one lender to the next. There's loads and loads of content on the channel about remortgaging. In fact, I did one of these the other day about this very same thing, moving from one lender to the next, so I'll pop a link in the description to that. But for now, let's think about the process we're going to go through here. So first thing we need to do is work out how much your property is worth. Now, when we speak to customers, we can help you kind of get a good idea of that figure. We can sort of have a rough ballpark so that we can do a rough affordability calculation. We can work out roughly how much you can borrow and just kind of make sure it roughly works. But what we're going to need for the housing association, because that's who you pay your rent to, that's who owns the rest of the property, we're going to need a proper valuation, and that is not from an estate agent, that is from a Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, RICS qualified surveyor. So they'll come out and give you a value of the property. Then we give that value to the shared ownership company, and that is what they will base their figures on. So if your property is worth 300,000 and you own 50% of it, then we need to find 150,000 for the other 50%. Now, the trick with this valuation, what we need to do is try and get it as low as possible. So we need a good friendly surveyor to come and give us a low valuation. Now, I'm not saying that anyone is going to lie. Please do not think that. No surveyor worth their salt is going to make up incorrect figures. However, we can use properties that are on the lower end of the scale. So a surveyor, when they come up with a valuation, they will look at similar properties to yours that have sold. And so normally there will be a range of properties that might be similar to yours. All I'm saying here is that we need to use the lower end if possible. So that's the trick with our shared ownership valuation, because the lower the value of the property of the shared ownership company, the less you're going to have to give them to buy out the rest of the share. So then once we've got the valuation, we know what the price of the property is, we know what the value of the property is, we know how much we need to give, and then we can work out your affordability. So your affordability needs to be enough to cover the mortgage you've currently got and then the additional share. So we need to be able to afford that. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, if you had to buy a shared ownership, people tend to buy shared ownerships because we can't afford to buy a whole property on the open market. So shared ownership really helps in that situation. So I'm not saying that suddenly within a year you're going to be able to go from that to buying out the whole lot, but maybe over the course of 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, however long it is, doesn't matter. Or if your situation has changed, you know, so maybe you bought on your own, but now there's a partner involved as well, and we can use their income. That really helps a lot of the time. Or, you know, maybe you had just had a baby when you bought the property and your income was lower, and now it's gone back up again. All these different things, all these changes in circumstances mean it can be possible within a few years to buy out the rest of the share. Anyway, so what we need is our valuation, and we need to check our affordability to make sure that we can cover the extra price of the property and the existing mortgage. We add those two together and make sure that we can afford that, and make sure your credit score is going to be okay with a new lender. Then we'll search the marketplace, search for the best lender that's going to give us the best rate and lend us the most amount of money to make all that happen. Then we need to do our mortgage application. So we need to apply to the new mortgage lender. Now that process is going to involve another valuation. So we need two. Now, the new mortgage lender will pay for this one, normally, most of the time. Most high street lenders will pay. So it doesn't cost you anything at all. But the figure that we used for the shared ownership company valuation does not have to be the same as the figure we use for the mortgage lender valuation. It will be a different surveyor looking at different information on a different day, so we can suggest maybe a slightly higher figure. And this really helps us. I'm not saying hundreds of thousands, but maybe if there's £10,000 in it from the shared ownership company to the mortgage lender, then that will help us and our loan to value. So our loan to value is how much of the property's value is mortgaged, how much mortgage we've got on the property. So if you own a property worth £100,000 and you've got £80,000 of it mortgaged, your loan to value is 80%. It's a nice easy scenario there. Not many houses are worth £100,000, but you get the idea. So we're going to the new mortgage lender. We're going to suggest a valuation that is hopefully slightly higher than the shared ownership company's one. And then we do the mortgage application based on that. We send in your pay slips and all that sort of stuff. There's loads of information on the channel about how to do the mortgage application and what's involved. So we do that, and then we get a mortgage offer, hopefully, a few weeks later on for the value that we've asked for, based on the value of the full price of the house. So we've done that because at the end of this process, the whole house will be yours. You'll have paid off the shared ownership company and the whole house will be yours. Then once we've got our mortgage offer and everything's ready to go, there's a solicitor as well that the mortgage lender will set up for us. Now, the mortgage lender will pay for the basic swapping of one lender to the next. They won't cover the cost of buying out the share, and that would probably be around £300 or so. We need to budget that to one side because the solicitor is going to charge that to deal with the shared ownership company and swapping all the money and everything. So on the day of completion, your new mortgage lender will release the money to the solicitor. The solicitor will pay off the old mortgage, and they will send the rest of the money to the housing association, which will then buy out your share. And then you'll be left with one neat new mortgage for the whole property, ready for you to repay over the next however many years it is. Now, this of course assumes that we're buying out the whole share. It's a similar principle if we're not buying out the whole share, if we're just staircasing. So maybe we're going from 50% ownership to 75, or whatever the amount is, but let's use those figures for a second. So all we need to do then is increase the mortgage enough to buy out of that extra 25% deposit. There'll still be a solicitor involved, there'll still be a bit of a legal process involved, a little bit less money to the housing association obviously. Then at the end of the mortgage process, you'll still have a shared ownership mortgage, you'll just own more of it. So then your monthly rent that you pay will be that little bit lower as well. Now, the other thing we might want to factor in is if you've got some savings to one side, if you've got a little bit of cash to put in as well. Maybe that's a gift from someone, maybe it's accumulated, maybe it's inheritance, maybe it's winnings or something, I don't know. Wherever that money comes from, that can also be money that we put in, and that can help reduce the amount of mortgage that we need going forward. So if you have got a little bit of savings that you're prepared to put into the mix, that can really help reduce the amount of mortgage that we need. So that gives you then a basic overview of moving from shared ownership to not shared ownership. The actual process is quite straightforward. straightforward and quite easy to do, but there's certain things you need to do at certain points, and not every lender will do it for you. So most high street lenders will, but not every single lender will allow you to do this. So it's important that you seek proper advice. It doesn't have to be from us, obviously, we'd love it to, but seek proper advice from a mortgage broker. If you would like to speak to us about it, you are more than welcome. So there's a link in the description to book an appointment straight in our diary if you want to, or there's also a link to our website. You can go and check us out and learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do and how we work. Until then, I will see you on the next video very soon. Take care.